You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Christina Tarantola.
This is Dr. Adam Martin.
And we are the Fit Pharmacist.
So what is the Fit Pharmacist? Is it a person? Not really. It's actually a movement. We as pharmacists have unique abilities to interact with our patients and lead by example. We have a lot of schooling, we have a lot of ambition, but a lot of times just life gets in the way. And if you take your eye off the ball, that can really derail your efforts to provide the best patient care possible for your patients, which is why we created the Fit Pharmacist, a movement to empower yourself to live your best life so that you can further empower your patients and yourself to live your best life.
Exactly. And we have a very special guest today who we are so grateful to have on our show, Dr. Corey Probst. But before we get into that, I want to tell you a quick little update on a new program that we're launching. So as most of you know, we are involved with our RX for Success group, and we're excited to announce that we're actually starting a 3-month course geared to help you grow your own pharmacy business. And it's a more shortened course than the one that we had before. So this group is starting May 29th, and we are only accepting 8 students. So the registration period is open now, but it closes May 20th. So we will put more details in the show notes with a link to learn more and how to register. So now we want to introduce our guest of the day, Dr. Corey Probst.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Corey.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're honored. I have personally known Dr. Corey for several years, and she is not only a business mentor, but a friend. She is tremendous in what she does and truly a pioneer in the health, fitness, and mental wellness industry. Doc, just a little information, because I could talk all day about this phenomenal woman. Dr. Corey Probst is a PhD, and she directs the Nutrition and Weight Loss Program as the Vice President and Wellness Director at the Diet Doc. She is licensed in clinical mental health counseling and a licensed professional counselor, having earned her bachelor's degrees in exercise physiology, a Master of Science in counseling, and a doctorate in health psychology and behavioral medicine. Her dissertation for her PhD addressed the perceived threats to weight loss and the relationship to the basic psychological needs as outlined in self-determination theory. Her education is enhanced by certifications in personal training, health coaching, and lifestyle and weight management consulting, and she is an IISN clinician. Did I get it all?
You can stop.
So, Dr. Corey, what are we going to be talking about today?
Oh, boy. We're going to be talking about emotion, and we're going to be talking about eating. And we're going to be talking about how to do both at the same time and do it well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love food, and I love to give hugs, so I guess I could be considered emotional. So
there we go. Absolutely. Yes.
All right, so with emotional eating, what do you, Dr. Corey, wish you could tell people about emotional eating? A lot of people, this might be the first time they hear that phrase, emotional eating. So what would you like to tell people about it? What is it?
Well, I love what you just said, that you love food and you love hugs. And so we're human beings, and I think the biggest thing to understand is that as human beings, we are going to have emotions. And emotions are the drivers of our actions, and they motivate us. So, one of the biggest kind of misconceptions that I think we have out there, and I do believe this is changing with more education and research coming out and people being more open to understanding it, is that emotions are good. We need them. We want them. Without them, we would be robots. We evolved to have these emotions in order to feel and have a level of drive and ambition and to move forward with persistence and consistency, and to want to strive for freedom and to have goals. And, without that, we don't really have a life. Mm-hmm. So I think if there's one thing I want to tell people, it's that I hope that we do eat with emotion, because it means that we're alive and we're breathing. And the other thing is that we all eat emotionally. When we sit down to a meal, I hope that we are feeling something like appreciation for the food that's in front of us, where it came from, because it didn't just show up there. Someone had to pick it out of the ground or from the trees, clean it, pack it up, ship it. So I hope that we are experiencing emotion when we're eating, appreciation, gratitude, a sense of presence, excitement for how this can nourish our bodies and change our energy levels and move us closer and closer towards health. So that would be the number one thing.
I love how you said without emotion, we don't have life. And I've never associated that with what you're saying about, you just completely always give me a new perspective about, appreciating your food. I mean, that's huge. And I think you're right in saying that all of us eat emotionally. And I never really correlated that.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. It's simple, and yet it's complex at the same time, because to get to the heart of it, I do think that say that was our overriding kind of foundation for the way that we want to approach our eating or approach our meals or our food, it does give us a platform for the how, and that was kind of your next question. I know what to do, I just don't do it. Well, a lot of us don't know how to do it. But, we can have a ton of knowledge about food, what's in it, and we can have a ton of knowledge about appropriate eating structure, how many meals per day, how is this structure going to affect my metabolism optimally, vitamins, minerals, hydration. We can have that knowledge, but how do we put it into practice is something completely different. And in my life, in everything that I do, in my eating life, my health life, my relational life, my career, job, whatever area we're going into, I always come back to what are my guiding principles? The how. Who do I want to be when I'm in this position with this hat on, in this role, in this conversation, eating this meal? Mm. And so if we can go into it with that, with appreciation, with gratitude, with presence, with a sense of excitement about where this food came from and how it's going to nourish me, it's a whole different feeling.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really profound point. Even as pharmacists through pharmacy school, we learn all this information, medications, counseling, and we have all this knowledge, but taking it a step further, how to apply it, how to get the message across to patients at all different reading levels, understanding, so that they can understand it, really makes the difference. Because if you have all this information, it's great, but if you can't put it into practice and use it, what's the point?
Right. And I think, Adam, it comes down to also learning how to learn. Learning is not just about memorization. It's not just about being able to recite back what you read on the page. There are more steps to it. And if we're talking about eating and emotion, then I can know that it's best to eat mindfully, right? I can know that. I can say that to you. It's best to sit down to a meal and eat mindfully for X, Y, and Z reasons. I'm going to feel more satisfied. It's actually physiologically going to be digested more optimally. I'm not going to look down at my plate and wonder, like, where'd that go because I was distracted and paying attention to something else. Okay, I can list all that stuff off, right? But if I don't know how to actually put a mindful eating practice into place and then embody it, like put it in action, like I'm actually doing it. I'm sitting at my desk right now and my lunch is in front of me. Like now I'm going to switch my phone off so I'm not getting any of the dings and the notifications. I don't have my computer open. It's shut now. And now I'm going to take a big, deep breath through my nose. Like, it actually takes doing it, embodying it. And it's not just in our minds, because knowing is in our minds.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring up the same concept that, you know, we had spoken about before with the other interview on empowerment. And I think that's well, because like you said, you can read a book, you can watch a video, but unless you put that into practice and embody it, like you're saying,
yes,
it's not going to really solidify that concept for you and make it real.
Absolutely. And I love that word real. And I think of authentic, like for me, because it's going to feel different for every single person who does try it, who does practice it. The experience is going to be very different and nuanced and layered.
Right.
Yes. So Corey, when you're... Go ahead.
Yeah. Nope. I was just going to say, you know, I'm thinking of the word understanding. Knowledge is fine. The next layer of that is a level of understanding and being able to peel those layers back and ask why, how, you know, what can bring this to life for me. And if we're looking at learning how to learn, you know, one of the best things that I've found for myself is, one, writing things down as I'm learning them. It solidifies it in our minds, in our memory banks. The second thing is to quiz myself. And then the third thing is to actually teach it.
Yeah.
And you guys as pharmacists and doing a lot of teaching right now and education have probably found that the more you talk about it and the more you help other people to assimilate new information and put it into practice, you know, the more it becomes very real for you. And you're learning new things as you're expressing yourselves through that information.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the counseling tactics that we use, specifically with inhalers. They found that over 95% of patients that are prescribed inhalers for asthma or COPD use them incorrectly because they just know. So one of the things that we do is whenever we're counseling a patient for the first time on, let's say, an albuterol inhaler, rather than say, like, do you get it, we say, like, can you please teach that back to me just so that I make sure I didn't miss anything.
Beautiful.
That's what unveils, like, did they really understand it? Were they paying attention? Then they're like, oh, say that again.
Yeah.
Yes, that's powerful. That's a really, really great example. Yep.
And when you're saying, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, ladies first.
Well, I'm not sure exactly where I was going to go. I think that I was thinking about how, you know, you're modeling for them in that moment how they can begin to do that for themselves.
Right.
You know, so as they're learning and they're on their own and you're not in front of them, how can they ask themselves to do the same when, you know, they're doing it independently? But we come to this place of awareness where when we have it and we've practiced it, and it has to be deliberate, we ask ourselves, like, okay, what's my motive? What's my motive right now? And if we're talking about eating, coming back to the piece of what's my approach when I have my meals, asking the deliberate question, okay, what's my motive with this meal? Because the motive could be, I just need to get it down. I've got my next appointment. It could be, I really want to take my time with this meal and savor every flavor, the textures, the colors, the sounds of my food. That's real mindful eating. I think, though, you can have a mindful meal if you're cognizant of the fact that you're like, this meal is going to take me 1 minute to slam down my throat. It's a protein shake, and I got to go see my next patient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's still a level of awareness around it. It's just different magnitude.
Yes. And it's interesting you say mindful eating and awareness, because with clients that we work with, a lot of them are pharmacists. That's one of, we ask, like, what do you identify as some barriers to your weight loss or health success? And they say, I just kind of trance out, where I come home from work and one moment I'm walking in the kitchen and the next moment all the cupboards are open and there's an empty bowl, and I was like, what the hell did I just do?
Right. I've been there. I've been there too. I think we probably all have.
So they describe that, and then also, like, they might be slightly aware, like, oh, I'm going into the same pattern, but they just can't snap out of it. So it's just like this habitual ritual after work of in the kitchen eating.
You guys are just rhyming off favorite
habitual ritual.
With that, a lot of people have this roadblock. So if you're in a trance-like state, how would you recommend someone snap out of it or change that habitual ritual?
Well, I'm kind of more preventative than let's put a Band-Aid on it. I know you guys are too. It is that much more difficult if you're already in it, right? If you're already in the habitual loop, like, pulling yourself out of that rut is going to be much, much harder. Is it doable? Yeah, I know a lot of people who, because if you have the level of awareness to recognize the thought in your head that's saying, I just can't stop, if you're truly aware in that moment and you're tasting the flavor of the peanut butter and then you're hearing the crunch of the rice cake, if you're truly aware, then it's not going to be that difficult to pull yourself out of it. That's true awareness. Like, if someone says to me, I'm emotionally eating, I'm aware, I know I'm doing it, I'm like, no, you're not truly aware. You're not, because if you were truly aware, you could zero in on and focus your attention on exactly what is happening, the crunch, the flavor, the texture. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is there's two things here. Learning how to position our attention, okay, and that's a practice. But then there's also, if I recognize that this is a habitual ritual, love that. Let's write a blog on that. If I recognize it's a habitual ritual, then what am I doing to prepare myself before I get home?
Right.
Because, so you guys are at work all day and you're filling prescriptions and you're working with patients and you're in this, like, very high alert, lots of, like, cognitive energy being used. I mean, you have to be on, or you can make some massive mistakes, right?
Yep.
So you don't want to go home with the same energy that you had at work. You don't want to walk through your home door with that same like go, like on energy. You don't want that. It doesn't set you up for success. You want to go in with a more relaxed but alert energy. Okay? You don't want to go in feeling stressed, anxious. We can acknowledge that you're fatigued and tired, but I would say there needs to be a habitual ritual set up before you get home to minimize the likelihood that you do just follow the old pattern. Walk in, put your bag down, go into the kitchen, open the cupboard, pull out the food, that same old thing. And something that I do is before I transition to any new environment, it's like this, it's pause. I take a pause. So when I get up in the morning, I do my whole routine, I have my pre-workout meal, get dressed, blah, blah, blah. I get in the car to come to work. But before I start the car, I'm sitting in a dark garage in my car, and I just breathe. My eyes closed. I take 3 big, deep breaths. Changing my energy. I'm shifting it. Okay, then I get to the office, turn off the car, same thing. Before I walk through the door, different energy from being in traffic and driving to how do I want to show up in my office? What energy do I want there? Then when I go home, same thing. So there's planning involved, there's the mental aspect of preparing, but there's also the embodiment of a new emotion and energy when you come into that space. Does that make sense?
Yes. So shifting, because not every environment's the same. It's not like a black and white. There's a transition.
Well, I like
Absolutely.
how you said it's how you show up and the intention that you have in shifting, doing that habitual ritual and doing that deep breathing. I think that can be a great tip that people can apply to their own life in whatever capacity, whenever they're shifting from home to work or work to home or to drop their kids off, whatever that may be. So I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, the cognitive piece of that is the asking of the question, how do I want to show up? What energy do I want to bring to this new environment? The embodiment piece is the 3 deep breaths to bring the sense of calm awareness.
Right.
Because if we just try to do one or the other, we're still going to feel like misaligned. Mm-hmm. We're going to feel out of whack. We're going to feel chaotic, or we're going to feel rigid, and we're not going to have that nice sort of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Dan Siegel. If you haven't read any of his books, I highly, highly recommend it. But he talks about what's called the faces flow. He's he's so funny because he puts everything in acronyms, which I love. I've borrowed that from him. But it's flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable. And isn't that how all of us want to feel most of the time?
Absolutely.
So that's that feeling of what's really called integration. Like, we can probably all relate to feeling like disintegrated, like things are falling apart, like everything's chaotic, I don't know what's going on, I can't focus. It's that sense of anxiety that can push anyone into wanting to back off, avoid, not take responsibility, and feel like they need to protect themselves from something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's what gets us into food. If we're feeling that way, we don't want to feel that way. And so there is the habitual ritual aspect. There's also the emotional, it's gone from a good sense of anxiety because, we have to step back and say, this emotion is here for a reason. Like, it's important to pay attention to what is this about, as opposed to this is really way, way, way too uncomfortable for me, and I need to get away from it, and I'm going to find something to numb myself out with so I don't have to take responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So there's a gap, there's a space that we can use to take a different approach. First, view emotion as a healthy cue, signal, and something to acknowledge, because emotion motivates us. We want it to motivate us to do positive things for ourselves, right? We want it to propel us toward that sense of integration where my actions are aligned with my purpose and my actions are aligned with who I want to be and show up as in this world and what my goals are. So, we can talk about just the concept of emotional eating. It comes down to these more fundamental things, though. How are we viewing emotion in the first place? Because emotion it's energy. Emotion is just energy. And when we can grasp onto that and then practice when we experience an emotion, feeling that energy in our bodies and just the sensations of it, like, it might be racing thoughts, it might be elevated heart rate, it might be sweaty palms, it might be this sense of fidgetiness, it might be we're having a more difficult time than we typically do lasering in on one thing during our work. Well, that's all great information. It's data that we can then use to ask a question. Okay, what is this here? What's this telling me? I've got all this data now. There's something important here, obviously, or the emotion wouldn't be here. And if it's the habitual ritual, I'm standing in my kitchen and I'm getting ready to engage in that same process I always have, I'm probably freaking tired. Right? So what's the need? What's the real need in that moment?
Sleepy time.
Rest. Yeah. Comfort, nourishment doesn't necessarily mean it has to come from food. If in that moment that person were to go over to their partner, say, or their pet, I mean, I have a human partner in the house, and they hugged that person or that animal, guess what would happen?
I'm guessing a big smile.
Oh, man. Yeah, you said you love hugs. I'm thinking in that moment, food would not be an issue anymore.
Yeah, it's connection, too.
It's connection. Yeah. And when we understand, when we understand what drives us and the different kind of emotions that we have in our body and what they really mean, and we learn how to tune into them, then we can understand, okay, this is what would really aid me in feeling integrated right now, like whole, fulfilled, loved, like I belong, I'm safe, I'm warm, I'm taken care of, I have my needs met. And typically it's a touch. It's a touch that food can't fix.
Right.
Food won't do it.
That's why Adam loves hugs so much. I'm giving him a hug right now.
I love it.
He lights up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I do.
It's biological. It is.
It's interesting. We'll go on that. We'll say it is biological. I agree with that. What you're talking about, like emotions aren't bad, don't be afraid of them, use them as a tool. The first thing I think of with my pharmacist type A mind is they're a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's pretty powerful because that's pretty much how a lot of the medications work. So your profession is focused on this, to correct a feedback loop. So use the principles we're trained in to translate them into healthy eating behaviors and to enjoy life. Not be afraid of emotion, but to embrace it as a tool telling you, hey, there's something here you need to look at. And if it gets louder and louder, it's like it's getting more and more of an issue.
And it's a skill that unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people have. And not that they don't want to develop, I don't think they know how. They're not being taught.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys are bringing people onto your podcast and bringing information to your patients that can help them to understand and gain a new perspective. I keep thinking about how often, people will label an emotion with a term that almost automatically flips the switch in their minds that it's bad.
Right.
Stress, there's good stress, there's called eustress, and then there's bad stress called distress. And depending upon our perception of whatever that stress or is, that's going to impact how it influences our bodies, our physiology, our health.
Yes, because that distress shakes your, quote, world and creates dis-ease. That's phenomenal. So with these tips, I love these tips. In the beginning, we said it's great to have knowledge, but it's not really going to help you unless you put it into practice. So the ways that we can do that, Dr. Corey has laid out in this podcast that you can implement into your life. And it's as simple as when you come home or when you leave work, before you start your car, sitting in there, you can just take 3 deep breaths and realize with intention the day's done. You're going back into, home or your other job or whatever your situation may be. Act with intention. And when you get in the door, take my favorite tip. Get a hug.
Yes.
Yeah. Really good hug.
I love the word intention, and that's so, so important. I think that a lot of people, though, go into their intentions with negativity. So, as an example, they may sit in their car, turn it off, close their eyes, take 3 big deep breaths, and their intention is, I will not go eat. Well, they're not helping themselves by saying that because now they're completely focused on eating.
Don't think of a pink elephant.
Right? Exactly. So the better strategy, the better process would be to think ahead, ask yourself what you're going to do. I'm going to go into my bedroom. I'm going to unpack my bag. I'm going to put on my sweatpants. I'm going to lay on my bed for 5. I'm going to go get a hug from Adam.
Tell me that out, Corey.
I wish you were closer, Adam. So the process needs to be positive, and I would advise to, this is oxymoron, I would advise not to have words like not, no, won't. So yeah, to focus on what you're going to do. And then, you know what? When you're sitting in the car taking your deep breaths, visualize actually doing it. It's not enough to just visualize the outcome. We have to actually visualize the process.
each step-by-step action that leads
Yes,
us to
exactly.
outcome you want. Got you. So whether or not you have a thought of being positive or negative, meaning do this, don't do this, put it in an absolute value. So your mind won't recognize it's affirmative or negative. Regardless of what the action is, don't do this, do this, it's going to be the action. So if you want to not eat food, how about instead, I'm going to eat healthy, or I'm going to have this instead of that, rather than I'm not going to have that. So focus on what you do want to do rather than what you don't.
What you want to avoid, yeah.
Exactly. Yes, and what you're doing is you're creating new, you're imprinting this into your subconscious so that it's marinating back there. It's marinating. It's like it's cooking. And then when you actually go to take the actions, you are propelled forward instead of having to like step on the brakes. And that's what we want. We want to feel like we're making, we're gathering momentum, right, towards the things that are important to us, as opposed to always having to, emergency brake, slam on the... We want that high power, like heightened and sustained motivation and momentum.
Keep the process.
One way to really facilitate that.
Wow. You always over-deliver, Corey. You give us so much valuable information. I'm always so impressed and grateful for everything that you share with us and for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you both. It's an honor that you ask me, and so yeah, thank you. I love what you both are doing. Your course sounds awesome and fun too. It's like high speed business development. Yeah.
Well,
very cool.
For a couple years, so I know the channels to follow you on to get more of this amazing content that Dr. Corey puts out. But Corey, for listeners that this may be the first time hearing your name or hearing you speak, how can people get in contact with you? How can they get more content like this from you?
Anyone can feel free to reach out to me via email. It's Corey, Kori, at thedietdoc.com. I have a Monday Motivational Mastery series that it's on YouTube, and the channel is The Diet Doc Weight Loss. It's also on Facebook, and anyone can go to my personal page, just Corey Probst. And then they can go to the main Diet Doc website, and I have a bunch of blogs on these topics specifically, and that website is thedietdoc.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, that YouTube channel, guys, I highly recommend it. I've been following every Monday. You're on episode, is it 15?
Yeah, 15 is coming up this Monday. Yep.
They're amazing. And I actually I listen to them on my way to Club Pharmacy because they range between about 10, average I guess 10 or 12 minutes, but they're highly impactful. They give away tips of how you can apply the tips she goes over into your life. So I find a lot of value in them. I highly recommend you guys check it out, subscribe, because Dr. Corey always over-delivers.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
We're sending you virtual hugs.
Yay! Yes, I can feel it. Oh, awesome.
All right, thank you, Dr. Corey, for being with us. This has been The Fit Pharmacist.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.